Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen, Care Fully. My name's Jen. I'm your host, and I have a beautiful guest today, Dahlya, here to just converse and share and be open and see where the energies lead us.
I love that. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining today. So, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and where they can find more info about you, and just, yeah, what kind of things spark your interest and where your passions lead you.
Oh, I love that. Well, that could be a lengthy answer, and I will just try not to make it so lengthy, and we can dive into like questions and answers with each other. First, I love that we're creating this on the solstice, and as we know, like moving into these energies, it's just a time to be and enjoy the journey rather than like reaching for a destination. and and I think that's really pertinent for you and me as healers, as professionals. So because we both work with families and kids, and so a little bit about me. My name is Dahlya Brown Shuck. I am owner of Holistic Medical Healing, and you can find me on Instagram at holistic.medical.healing, or my website, same name, and on the website, holisticmedicalhealing.com. No periods in there. And my passions have led me into where I'm at because of my own personal experience, as well as because of my own personal education and background. And really rooted and grounded in neuroscience and nutritional psychiatry and sensory processing and picky eaters and all these things that really influence kids and like the pediatric population, that have a cascading effect into the parents and
Mhm.
how the family operates as a unit. Also, with my own experience of working with these kinds of families, but then also moving into out of healthcare into the coaching realm, working with adults as well as the families, really grounding into, I think all healers have their intuitive gifts. It's just most of them are not able to really dive into them because of the standard of care, or because of the scientific method, or because of the protocols that we are, required to follow by governing bodies. And what I have been able to do since moving out of the healthcare realm is really embody and teach my clients and families a whole wide variety of holistic tools, as well as the intuitive gifts, marrying that with the science. So it's like really combining the science and the magic to help families heal. And if you had asked me years and years ago if this is what I would be doing, that is not what I would be doing. My first career was an artist, and I love creation. Like, I am just very passionate about creation in general, and I love watching families and kids and adults find their resiliency and accomplish and overcome behaviors.
Mhm.
And that can be anxiety, depression. I work with a lot with hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting, uh, a lot of just adults who are really diving into their intuitive gifts even more and are looking for direction. Um, when we can learn how to go beyond the medical model and truly expand and use all the tools at our disposal, what really happens with the families is magical. And I love watching people come out on the other side of it and be like, oh my God, I did that. Or, oh, I had no idea that I was capable of X, Y, or Z. And in my world, it's like, I had no idea that, like, I could get to the root of the issue so quickly, or that I could go 30, 60, 90 days without like touching my skin or pulling my hair, or, moving through a sad, anxiety provoking time and not get lost in it. Like, I love helping people find that place.
Yeah, it's almost like you remind them how to find themselves along the way. And with like these structures that are functioning as our authorities, while they may mean well and that part of their systems are trustworthy, it's like we still have to have our own discernment with what's igniting within us and how we can use our intuition and how we can give ourselves a little bit more credit because like the science is clear, the nutrition is clear, everything's clear, but it's like when we're arriving to those basics and even the foundations that lead us to those further like levels and those deeper trenches, it's like we have to know either like figure out who we are or establish who we are. And that's what takes like that guidance and that like that feeling of like, wait a second, like, oh, like my coach or my leader is like seeing me more clearly than I see myself. Like, whoa, how do I get a glimpse of what they're seeing? Or how do I really get a glimpse of like who I could be? Like,
Mm.
that's so beautiful to facilitate that and just to hold that space for people who like deep down it's what they want, but they don't know that that's even how to get there. Or, like it's almost like, because sometimes with my work, I find that when parents come in, it's like they're saying that they're there for one thing, but they don't even realize the deeper ways that they're actually fulfilling those deep soul needs. And like whether that's the spirituality coming online or whether that's like the deeper knowings and um the intuitions, it's like we can follow that, we can lean into that, and basically like we get to have our own voice of what we want and what our goals want to be. Like I'm sure you see that with like just either how people have their own goals or they look to you to see what their goals should be. It's like it's a cool tool to utilize of like, okay, like you get to see people clearly and help them see themselves more clearly. Because we'll always need that mirror in a sense to like really help us just see
I,
what's next.
I love that you said mirror. I have a couple of different free offers on my website. One of them, well, one is a nutrition guide for mental health. The other one is a body image workshop. But one of the activities in that workshop is all about mirror work. And and people's perception of what we see in the mirror
Mhm.
is covered with stories and identities that what I've seen is like they don't really belong to them. And it's things that they repeated statements that they've heard over and over and over and started integrating into their being. And then when they show up in the mirror, they have these perceptions of who they are. And it's really hard for them to break free from that. And I love that you said the word mirror, because I think that's oftentimes what we do offer. And it's a beautiful imagery, is that mirroring of who you want to be, and then us providing the roadmap of how to get there. But here's the thing, it's up, we can hold the space, but it's up to the client to truly do the work, kind of like what we were just talking about.
It's so vulnerable. It's like, especially if someone has never been held before, it's like, is this safe to be held? Is this safe to show my true colors and my true self? Will the person holding space for me, will they really get it? Like I think about all these um like thoughts that might come up for people in the process because this is not like what everybody first thinks of like for asking for help. Like I feel like it takes a certain level of person to say, okay, I'm ready to like receive help. And not even because I'm like struggling, or maybe I'm struggling, but like I'm willing to receive help because I'm worthy of that. I'm worthy
Mm.
of living that next level. I feel like
Oh, that's beautiful.
I feel like
The
it's a huge bridge that people cross.
that worthiness of asking for help from a place of worthiness rather than from a place of victim.
Mm,
And
yeah.
and that's where I'm really bridging my practice
Mm,
from working with clients who are so in the victim place, because it's well, if you have the right kind of support, like, you can actually really move out of that quite quickly, right? But the person has to be willing. And
mhm,
part of that willingness, and here's the thing, it's like it's a real, like, laser focused perspective, that when I'm working with a 16-year old right now with anxiety, depression, and hair pulling. And two things that you said that are resonating is, like, one, I know she knows deep inside that she's worth it, because otherwise she would not have said yes to working together for 6 months. The other part of that, which you touched on, is, not only, like, will the professional get it,
mhm,
but do they understand that? And for, I think, for some of the clients that you see, as well as some of the clients that I see, one of the reasons that this family had said yes is because I understand,
mhm,
what it's like to move through anxiety and depression. And I'm not going to go into all of my story here, but I pulled out all my hair, I picked up my skin, I am in recovery for these things, and I'm trained to help others facilitate this process, to move through it. But when you are struggling, looking for help that isn't enough, and you say yes to that help, and then it doesn't help in the way that you thought it would,
mm,
it brings your own psyche back to this place of, well, maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe
mm.
I'm not good enough. And it definitely had something to do with the person, but that's like, it also has to do with the professional that you were seeking help from.
Totally. Yeah, that's really huge because it's like it's that consistent coming back to yourself of, okay, I'm going to lean in again, even though I've been uncomfortable in the past, or even though I haven't had that modeling yet, but I'm on my way to receiving that modeling of where it is that I want to go. I don't know what it looks like yet, but like I feel defeated, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to get back up. And that's so much courage, especially when it feels lonely and when it feels like in that discouraging place. Definitely. So much wisdom. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to pull a card for us because,
Okay.
okay.
I love this game.
All right. I have one. It says, has a stranger ever changed your life?
Yes. And I know I'm going to, like, expand on that answer. I'm just kind of thinking of, like, what kind of stranger? I think it speaks to the ability for us as humans in this human experience to stay open, and to stay open to the messages that can come in any way. And we don't always, it is not up to us to judge the package that they come in. And so many times, it's so funny that I just said that, because judging the package that they come in, many times can look like us judging, for example, like the professionals, and what kind of training do you have, what certifications do you have, and so, everyone was a stranger at some point, I think, unless you knew them from, like, past lives and past souls. I've had so many strangers that have spoken truth and wisdom into me. And when I am in tune with myself and listening, it is so obvious. And sometimes it's after the fact that I'm like, oh, I had asked a question that morning and didn't know the answer. And then wouldn't you know, some strangers that were talking in the coffee shop, and here's a real like concrete example. I had totaled my, can you hear me?
Yes.
I had totaled my car in a car accident, and this was right after Hurricane Harvey in Texas. And at that time, I did not have a cash. I did not have enough money to like buy a brand new car. And I went to a nutritional conference, even though I tried to cancel, and because I had to take care of my car. And my car, I used to see brain injury clients for work and pediatrics in their home. And so it's like my car was how I saw all my clients. And so I wasn't going to go, so I could figure that out. And I did go. And at that conference, I wasn't even getting Starbucks. I was passing by two women talking in the line, and I overheard her say, well, Dave Ramsey says you use the cash on hand to fix what you have if something has happened to your car. And
Chills.
and from that point, like I went home. I totaled out my car and used the cash I had to fix it, which it was the exact amount that I had to fix it. And then I signed up for the Dave Ramsey course, which I have done ever since, and was able to get myself out of debt within 2 years. So you just never know. you,
And you probably had some sort of sensation or light bulb moment around that where you were like following that. Not only were you like in the right place at the right time that you tried to get out of, but even then you're like, wait, something resonates within that. I'm going to just get curious and be open. Wow. When you
and I
shared,
think
yeah.
this goes to like the name of your podcast. It's to listen fully, no matter how that comes through.
Mm. Yeah, like be willing to wow yourself, surprise yourself by what you can really hear when you listen.
And if there's anybody listening to us and they're like, okay, but how do I do that? That's where I'm going to say, like, reach out to me on social or go to my website, send me a message, because I offer, sessions to help people learn how to really trust their intuition and start listening to their gut. And I won't get into all of that, but sometimes when your gut is all overpopulated with a poor gut microbiome, and you're full of like fast food and junk food and colors and all the different things, it is hard to listen to your intuition because your body is so focused on like digesting and figuring out what to do with like a chemical overload.
Right.
I don't know why I said that, but I feel like someone's going to need to hear that.
That's so important, especially because it's literally going against the grain, right? We're not really taught how to take care of our gut. We're not really, I mean, we know that like it's our second heart, right? Like listen to your heart, listen to your gut. We know it has as many neurons as like your brain or something like that, but it's
It
like,
has more neurons than your spinal column, and 80 they say 80 to 90% of the neurotransmitter uh, secretion is formed in your gut microbiome by what you eat and what you put on and in your body. And definitely one of the things that I help adults with very much so is like gut healing, walking people through a gut healing protocol to stay off of meds, to get off of meds, to just clean up their diet, to clean up their gut. Because when you have a ugly gut, it's hard to, or a toxic one really, it's hard to listen to your gut, your intuition. But then also all of your other systems get involved. And so hormones um, digestion, being able to go to the bathroom on a consistent basis and not have it be painful, your sleep quality, your stress quality, like it's a whole cascading event. And I love teaching people about that because it's not as hard as you think, but there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also like this setup of just being confused because it's like people feeling overwhelmed of, well, where do I even start? Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I might as well stick with what's convenient while I figure it out. Like it feels so easy to like be in that chaos and overwhelm of like, I'm already stressed out, so let's just go for what's easy. But yeah, I think that is so important to know that it's like actually not that challenging. It just requires a little bit of planning and that knowledge piece of like, what's all this information that we didn't receive that would have actually really benefited us. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing in you sharing that too is like you actually address multiple layers and multiple um, different avenues of how maybe like your microbiome could manifest into like the connection with mental health, emotional health, like all of that. Yeah.
It's so I had just finished taking some continuing education on trauma, and there's such a correlation between the neurotransmitters and, I mean, just serotonin, norepinephrine, like just all of them, GABA, how they are expressed, and anxiety looks like one, and depression looks like another, and trauma looks like another. And when our gut microbiome is not supporting that, we have to have movement. Like we have to have the movement within our body, within our brain, in order to move through and move past and beyond what can be a real brain challenge. And so that's where it's like some people don't really understand or realize the connection and how powerful it is, because that's the, I mean, when you have the rigidity in your brain, well, more rigidity will create more trauma patterns and more neurotransmitter expression to support that. And rigidity can also look like saying, eating the same thing every single day, and going to, and having McDonald's every single day. And that's not going to help what we call neuroplasticity, which is truly how we move beyond and move through. And so it's so multidimensional. And that's where I see a lot of people. And it's funny, this is also one thing that they said in this trauma course was so many people, and you don't have to have like real trauma to, I hate to say the word real trauma. Trauma is different things to different people, right? You don't have to have like a massive, massive abandonment thing go on in order to have trauma. I mean, it's just, we're all kind of hit with it on lots of different levels. And when it's not managed, people will go to meditation or yoga, or I have a lot of, different sensory tools that I use. However, you can do all those little things, but unless you are really coming to the foundational part that is going to help people heal, you're only working on the surface. And then that's when people are like, but I did this and it didn't work.
Mm.
Right? Or I hear all the time, I went gluten free for 3 months and nothing changed. Okay, well, I mean, what else were you doing during this time? Like, it's not a one stop shop.
Right. We can't just digest what we're literally consuming and putting into our bodies. It's like we're also digesting our environments and we're digesting the information that we're receiving. It's like how you said with trauma, it's like our perception is our own reality. So like the way that we perceive any sort of input, like that gets to be up to us depending on so many different layers and levels of consciousness, background, everything. Like I may go through something my sibling went through, and it may hit us both really different because we are really different, you know? So it's like the complexity of being human, like we don't really have to figure it out, but we can like tune in to like what's come from it, and like become interested in like those possibilities. When we do feel worthy enough to receive them, it's like, whoa, I can live so much differently and feel so good. Like, whoa,
Mm.
am I really worthy of that? You know, like, can I actually like say goodbye to that intolerance or that thing? You know, it's like let's step away from the drain and see what's possible, you know? Whereas like if we're always feeling drained, we may not know that that's what it is. We may just think that that's normal.
People think that that's normal. I had a, it's so interesting. I had an adult client. I have a program called Emotional Abundance, and it's a 4 or 6 month program. For her, it was 7 months, and because these things are not like a quick fix, right? And when she had a win, we like spent an entire session on journaling it, creating art out of it, making a poem. And of course, wouldn't you know that, like, you know, and she's a very artistic, creative, expressive, and it's such a great, powerful healing modality. And when we started, she was like, I don't know where to go. She was like, it's so much easier to write or make a poem about something painful. It's so funny. The same thing happened to a 14-year-old that I see. For hers, it was much shorter. And actually, hers was so profound because, again, she also said it's easier to make a poem out of pain when she's mad, right? So kids like to use these very concrete, black or white emotional terms. And and so I just kind of prompted her a little bit. And oh my gosh, like the poem that came out of it was brilliant. I mean, and it was all about joy. And it was the intention was to have her lean into the light and the love of the joy of the success that she just experienced, because we don't do enough of that. We think it's normal to experience all this anxiety and pain and not be able to sleep and all these, you know, different symptomology. And when we are paused for a moment to breathe life into the emotional abundance feelings of the joy, it just, I mean, she lit up in such a way that I was like, this is gold. And I think, you know, you're right. Like you said it, that people think that that's what they're used to and that's what's normal. And and it's really unfortunate and sad that that's become the norm.
Yeah, it's like am I willing to like be in this unknown of spaciousness that leads to something different? Because if it's something different, I have no control over it. I don't know what it's going to turn out to be or what it's going to be like. And then if everyone around me is not doing that, then that also creates this illusion of like, I'm separate, I'm different, I'm other. And we don't really celebrate that as much either, which like I wish we did. I wish we knew how unique we each were and what that could be, you know, but like there is so much of an emphasis of fitting in because that goes back to our survival too, right? Of like if surviving is normal, if like chasing after our food to like receive our natural dopamine is not is normal, it's like we get confused because now we can like sit on our couch like 2 clicks away from Amazon Prime, 1 click away from Uber Eats. You know, it's this confusion of like, wait, like I want the real thing, but like the way the world's set up is that I have to actually put in that effort to like how you said move and just yeah, plan for what it is. Like knowing more so of like how we can create more of what does feel good. And then like take our power back and be like, whoa, I can do that. Like I can feel this joy from head to toe and not be freaking out, not be panicking, not be like the world's ending. It's like, whoa, I totally like took control or like
Mm.
created that.
It's funny because it's almost like the neuroscience of feeling good. And I know there've been so many books on it. There's one of my favorites. Let me see. Is by a PhD at Harvard. I can't find the book right now. But it's all about joy and like the psychology of being happy. And what you were talking about with like sitting on the couch and ordering like Uber Eats or Amazon, both of those orders provides the brain that dopamine rush and the dopamine feedback loop of I did one and I'm getting another, like the cause and the effect right there, right? And same with Amazon. And then you just have to be patient and like have it show up. And they've done an even better job of like having it delivered within like 24 hours, so that it's like our instant gratification gets fed really, really quickly. And on the other side, the opposite spectrum of like that dopamine rush is also creating something, is having that joy, is leaning into the joy so that your brain gets to have that happy hormone and have that rush from something that is tangible for you with your own perception, not just like a click away.
Right. Yeah, it's so deep. It's like, it's making me think of this book called Dopamine Nation. And it's like, it talks about how we're like inconvenienced by like our modern day. And it's why we're so unhappy and so out of touch, because it's not actually what we want, right? Like in theory, we think we want it of like, yeah, get your items faster, get more done, but it's like we're going against like these natural rhythms, which is just so fascinating to me.
You're absolutely right with the going against the natural rhythms in when I'm working with, and I love this part. Like I teach it to the adults, but I love working with the kids, especially women, girls who are just starting like that hormone cycle, and we learn the different rhythms that females have. And especially like when I'm with them for like 6 or 7 months, we can really dive into their cyclical nature of their rhythms and how that is presented on a monthly basis. And then there's red flags that they start to learn about and they start to get warned about because they see it over and over and over and over. And then they start recognizing that, oh, maybe their anxieties are more cyclically based, and maybe you can do X, Y, or Z to help with that at this specific period of time in your 30-day cycle in the month. And then your panic attack or your anxiety may not, actually will not present the same as it used to. And that's, talk about taking your control back. It's so fun to watch.
I desperately needed that when I was like 16. I'm just thinking about that because today is the 2 years that I've been off of birth control, hormonal birth control. It's been 2 years. And so like, wow, if I could have had that guidance when I was 16, oh my gosh, life would be so different. Like I would say like the best thing that happened from those 10 years was just my skin was really great, but I'm learning now like just these natural ways of like how to take care of my skin and feeding myself from the inside out and just allowing it to be what it is, even if it's not like this perfect, the way I see it. But yeah, it's been definitely an interesting ride.
Yeah, I think that's part of the joy that I get of working with the parents and the kids.
Mhm.
And it's because I will educate. I have all these PowerPoints and things for the parents, and sometimes I'll use them for the kids if they're interested in. But we also go over like how to get the chemicals out of your diet and your beauty regimen, so that, because they're all neurotoxins and they will get expressed in our, for example, acne, right? Or emotional lability, or so many different ways. And when I'm teaching these, I mean, yeah, it's like the programs that I've created are totally programs that I wish I could have had access to when I was that age.
Yes.
And these these girls just come out so much smarter about themselves, and their parents are so, it's like they get to breathe,
Mm.
and they get to have that really long exhale, knowing that, at least for this period of time, it's not all on them.
So important. Because sometimes that is where parents' pride gets in the way of like, oh, like maybe someone else can help better than I think I can. Not because I'm not capable, but just because like I'm not here to just do everything, you know?
And you're there to love.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately why, I mean, as a new stepmom, I know you and I were talking about this with like the conscious parenting.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a wild ride it's been. And learning how not to judge and how to come from a place of love. Oh, it's so good in theory. And in practice, it takes so much practice.
Mhm.
Like, I can know everything, and I don't know everything, but I can know so much. I'll tell you, here was a really, I was quite impressed that everybody was so receptive to this weekend. My 10 and 12-year-old uh, were, well, they were starting to argue. It was Saturday morning. No, it was, yes, it was full moon energy, which of course I was doing my own full moon embodiment practice. And I was like, I'm not going to let your stuff get in my way. But then my husband was letting their stuff get in his way, which then would have gotten in our way. And so, I see my husband go into like the son's room, uh, and he sits down with him. He's like, okay, what did your sister do? And like they talked about it. And then he went into the girls' room and they talked about it. And I was like, why are we so separated? And so it's like I brought everybody together. I gave somebody a stick, and I was like, here's the talking stick. And it actually went well. And they were receptive. And it was so great to have people like not interrupt. That was a good win. You probably appreciate that.
That sounds so intuitive because you're like, when you have a chance to like tell your story, then you're more in your head. But when you're like confronted with, it sounds like it was either a circle or, like you're literally looking at each other and then you're just like, boom, in the moment. You're like, okay, this is how I feel versus
Mm-hmm.
like,
And everyone,
and, yeah.
that's exactly right. Because what I saw happening was like getting pinned, like I wasn't sure what the honest answer was. And so if you bring everybody together, you have to be honest because the other person's listening.
Right. Right. And what's true for you gets to be different than what's true for you. And like, how do we fall in the middle or how do we honor both or honor ourselves in effort to like move through discomfort or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
it comes back to that perception of like, oh, like we can learn together about each other and it's safe enough to do so together. It's like
Oh,
that.
I like that.
It's like, let's lean in. It's going to be weird, but let's just do it. And that way we don't have to like
That
ignore each other for the rest of the day or, it's like, let's just do it now so we can like move through, move with, and move forward.
we have a wall that is a chalkboard, and I think I want to write on it. We're going to lean into our feelings. It may be weird. We're going to do it anyways.
Yes. And maybe they'll be like, what is that? And then you'll be like,
Yeah, they're going to know that there's more circles in their future.
yeah. Okay, on to the next one.
Okay, one more.
What is the most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to you?
Why don't you go?
Oh, okay. The most unexplainable thing. Hmm. Well, I think when I think about like unexplainable, it makes me think of like energies and just things that like don't make like logical sense. Um,
That's where I went to.
and I wish I could limit it to like the most unexplainable thing. Like I wish I could narrow it down to one thing, but I feel like when I like increase my connection to like the spiritual realms and like my guidance and my angels, I like there's just moments where I can't explain it, where it almost feels like telepathy. And like I'm really big into synchronicity, and so if ever I see a license plate that says you and then like a series of numbers, I'll immediately like I have an angel numbers book in my car, and I'll immediately open it up to that page and circle it. And it can literally be like the exact thought that I was just having, or like the anxiety or the worry that I was like fearing. And then like I see this angel number and I'm like, okay, I wish I could make that up. But I think like along those lines, like when my grandpa died, um, he was one of my soulmates. And so I feel like just like those 2 weeks after he died, it was, just like flickering of the lights, or like the TV would go off, or um, I'd be on like a Zoom call and like the camera would flicker, or just things would happen. Um, and like, yeah, they would just happen so often that I'm like, this is not made up. Or it's like I can't explain it, but because I'm tuning in and following that inclination, it's like it's coming up stronger, because it's almost like because I'm receptive to it. But then like kind of how you see in the movies too, it's like even when you're not receptive to it, it comes back even louder, and you're like, okay, like what is it? So I feel like I would have to say the synchronicities in my life, because it's usually the little things. Like I think it was 2 weekends ago, where maybe it was last weekend. I don't know. No, yeah, 2 weekends ago. I saw two moose, and it was just so powerful. Like I'd only ever seen a moose in the wild one other time before. And I was listening to that Pleiadian book while it was all happening, and I'm like, this is not like, you can't explain this, like just some animal magic. And it said something potent about like the moose energy, where you can't look to others for like how you need to be. It's like you're so unique and odd and weird, but in your own way. And that's like the medicine. And I was like, yeah, this is it. So probably like my synchronicity stuff.
So much of what you just said, I love. It's the medical brain in me is like this, the neurodiversity, but forget that. And I saw when you had posted also about the moose, so I was like, oh yes. Uh,
And that's like, I have the ability to get so excited, especially with
well,
like
so that's
synchronicity.
what lights us up, and that's where it's like when we can teach others how to move through the stuff that's holding them back. This is what's on the other side, and and it's so funny because immediately, like, I knew exactly what answer for me. And it's me channeling light language for my clients. And however, you explained it really well, because this has been a brand new channeling that I was instructed that I would be doing back in the middle of the year. And I only tapped into it because I was letting my dog transition to her next soul's purpose. And I started doing a lot of light language on Daisy. And and I've been doing light language on my clients now. And what happens during this is it shuts off all of this, all the brain, the frontal lobe, all the parts of the brain. Not all of it. It actually opens up a very specific part, and it channels through just like the messages that the person needs to hear in such a way. And this is what I never would have could have explained, and never would have imagined. And I just finished a session with my friend Roxy, and during our session, her TV turned on twice. And she said that has only happened during like a session with a couple of other people. And she was like, if you needed a confirmation. Uh, and so I think it's like the most unbelievable is what my intuitive self and soul always knew from the very beginning, you know? And it's so funny because the card that is looking up at me, and I
Wow.
can't make this up, is light beings. And if you take a look at the card, you'll see like on this side is like this human face, but it I don't know, with like the light in the brain, right where the brain would be, looking down on Earth and all the other planets. and and I think it's very appropriate for like you and I to get to in this uh, in this session, because also what I think is really unbelievable that I never would have imagined was like honestly working with Jocelyn, and how that would have opened up so many avenues for my psychic gifts, and I know for you as well. And like that's just awesome stuff.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like since working with Jocelyn, I feel like just that word possibilities, like I was never open to so many ways of receiving and so many avenues of like timelines and just like that unshakable um I don't know if confidence is the word, but like just yeah, like that attunement to wait a second, like I have full control. And like where other things have maybe like influenced me before, it's like I'm taking my power back, like I've got this.
Attune to receiving. And that, yes, but we can only get to here as we move through some of that other stuff that's in our way.
Yeah.
Like we have to do that work in order to, I'm going to say the word arrive, and I don't mean that word, but it's like in order to
Yeah, like arrive
be
to
an open.
yeah, like arriving to being seen or expressing or like because there is that moment where you declare it and decide it and do it before you're ready because that's just how we do it. So well, thank you so, so much for coming on today. This has been such a treat. So fun to connect with you. And are there any other words of wisdom you'd like to leave before we depart today?
Honestly, this has just been such a pleasure, and I'm just really feeling this gratitude and joy in my body for this conversation, because oh, I think we covered so much. And for anybody who has listened to the end, like what a gift. And um, if there's ever any questions, I know for either of us, like social media, websites, all those good places, um, I just can't thank you enough for doing what you do and how you serve and how you show up, because it's the work that we've done that has allowed us to be who we are, for who we need to be it for, and for ourselves and our families and our furry pets. And
Yes, yeah, and leading the way takes so much courage. So thank you for being on that path too. It's amazing to see just women and people in general rise to that occasion of their life. So,
yeah,
well, I hope you guys have a beautiful day and
thank you.
we will see you soon.
Sounds